This is Brian from UniExplore, the co-founder and CEO. You probably have known me for a while as another person. So we're very pleased, we're very happy to welcome you to the session. This is our first career coaching session, and basically we just wanted to provide some information, some insights about the Canadian job market. We've invited Garret here, one of our best career counselors at UniExplore, to give you guys more information, and also based on his knowledge and experience in the industries, to kind of like show you guys what job seeking is in Canada. So at the end of the session you'll have 10 minutes to ask questions. So get prepared. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Just post them in the WeChat group we have, and then I'll pick some questions, and here we'll provide some good information and feedback. And just a bit introduction about Garret. He'll go into the details, but basically Garret been working in the industry, mainly the investment and financial service industry and commercial real estate, for about 10 years, probably over 10 years now. And he successfully coached people to get jobs at management consulting, investment banking companies such as Deloitte, LaSalle Investment, and Greybrook. So I'm pretty sure you'll hear a lot of good information from Garret. So we're very happy he's here today with us. Now we just pass it over to Garret. Thank you, Garret.
Thank you, Brian. So before I go into introducing myself, I just wanted to briefly let everybody know sort of the purpose and the goal of today's webinar and the series of webinars that are going to be following this. Now, the goal of this series of webinars is to educate you about the Canadian employment atmosphere and the skills that you need in order to succeed and get a job in Canada. Now, these skills that you're going to be learning today are applicable to all disciplines, whether you're going to go into business, whether you're going into engineering, computer science, the arts, history, whatever it might be. These skills are cross-functional and they will be helpful against all disciplines. Now, today's webinar is going to be a general one. We're going to briefly touch on all of the skills necessary in order to succeed in getting a job, while the following seminars and webinars are going to be drilling more down into the details on each specific skill. Okay. Now, you might be wondering, why would you want to listen to me? What skills do I have in order to impart knowledge onto you? So I have personally been working in the commercial real estate industry for about 8 years now. I started off by doing a Bachelor of Commerce in accounting at Carleton University. From there, I got a job being a commercial real estate appraiser, and those are individuals that value commercial real estate products. I had an opportunity to work at Deloitte, but I turned it down in the preference of joining the real estate industry. From there, after being an appraiser, I spent a number of years at Jones Lang LaSalle in the debt capital markets team, where I participated in over $1 billion of financing transactions across all asset classes. While working at Jones Lang LaSalle, I co-founded R2 Capital, which is a private commercial real estate debt and equity raise platform, and they're a licensed exempt market dealer, which is a private equity dealer across Ontario and Canada. So this company ended up achieving well over $1 million in annual revenue per year for the 2 years of its existence. From there, I also helped facilitate the HR functions of the company and ended up hiring probably 20 to 25 financial service dealers while working there. From there, I also assisted in the co-founding of UniExplore, which you all know and appreciate, as well as I ended up working at Trez Capital, which is a private commercial real estate banking association where I originate and lend out financial products for commercial real estate development, such as the construction of condos, as well as the construction of multifamily assets. So that's just a brief history of me and sort of the experiences that I've had a number of HR functions. I've looked at thousands of resumes. I have applied and gotten into a number of interesting and cool jobs throughout my career. And that's why I have the ability to sort of give you guys a bit of an insight on how this is going to work and how to get a job in the Canadian employment market. To touch on that a bit, I am a career counselor and alumni representation officer at Carleton University. So I've helped out a number of kids who are looking for help just coming out of school, primarily in the commerce program. But again, these skills are quite applicable across all boundaries. It's mainly the business kids sort of live and breathe it a little more, but everybody from all disciplines can benefit from this type of help. So just getting right into the details, the number one thing that you have to first think about when you're going to look for a job is who you are. And that ends up being the most important thing. What are your skills? The easiest way to break this down is, are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? That's one of the two primary skill differentiators that a lot of people have. Some people like talking to people and get energy from it. Some people don't. The extroverts are the people that end up having better skills in sales, whereas introverts might have better skills in financial analysis. These are important things that you need to consider when you're looking and thinking about the type of job that you want to have. If you're somebody that doesn't like talking to people, then I wouldn't recommend going into a sales-based role. But that doesn't mean that there aren't millions of jobs out there that are applicable to your type of personality. So one of the main personality tests that end up being there on the web is the Myers-Briggs test. I recommend everybody to check it out. It ends up defining your personality type into a series of 16 different categories and really giving you some insight on the types of jobs and the types of careers that are available to that particular personality type and which end up benefiting more. My particular personality type is I'm introverted, I'm intuitive, I'm a thinker, and I'm a perceiver. So what does that mean? That basically means I'm an individual who is a problem solver. I'm not the best at talking with individuals, and I just so much so enjoy thinking out of the box. So that means that my type of personality is good for entrepreneurial based activities, as well as sort of thought processes and financial analysis. Hence why I've ended up working at a number of financial institutional firms and co-founded a number of companies. You got to play to your strengths. So everybody has their strength. You have to identify it, and then you got to use it and leverage it. Because an introvert trying to compete with extroverts in a sales-based role isn't going to work. But that introvert might have the upper hand against other people when it comes to financial analysis-based work. So the next thing I would like to say is that everybody has family, everybody has friends. You have to look at those family and look at those friends and determine what kind of connections those people give you. If your dad, the chief operational officer of PetroChina, then I would particularly use that because he might be able to get you a job in either PetroChina or in a company that is related to it in that field or industry. If your mother is the head of a university, you might be able to get a good job in the educational background. Those are the types of connections that you existingly have that can definitely help leverage you in order to get a job in the future. But you want to play against those strengths because it's like there's a lot of number of functions at PetroChina. There's a lot of number of functions at university. You got to look to see what kind of connections that you have right out the gate because those are going to be your best chances in order to get a job or career outside of school. It's all about who you know. Leading into that, if there's somebody that you don't know and you want to know, you're going to have to learn how to network. There's a number of ways in order to network. So one of the key things is events. If you want to get into a job or an industry, I don't recommend you just applying on Indeed or other job posting boards to get into that particular job. You have to know people at that company. Now, how do you get to know people at that company? You have to go out there and put yourself out there in order to meet people at that company. Now, there's lots of industry events. There's lots of things that are online webinars. There's lots of opportunities to meet these individuals. Now at events, these are sort of networking events, cocktail events, receptions where you might meet people in the industry. You might meet people that are looking to get into the industry. These are very important things that you need to attend and go to. Because if you're an individual that's looking to get into Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, or Ernst & Young, so big four accounting firms, they host a wide range and number of cocktail events, receptions, where they're actively looking for prospects at that school, at particular schools. So you want to get into those events and meet the people that are actually at the firm. Because if people like you, they will want to bring you into the firm. Doesn't matter if that individual is a decision maker or not. Everybody ends up having a say. Everybody has a connection. So that's why you want to know as many people that you possibly can. Now, in order to find these events, you're just going to have to go online, or you're going to have to talk to people in person, or go to the company itself. There are always events that are happening. There's a lot of scheduling services that are online, like Eventbrite in Canada. Those are the types of things that you want to look for, and then try to find events in order to get into them. Because once you're in the event, then you can network with people, you can meet new people, and those people will help you succeed. Now, what if there aren't events in your industry? Let's say that you're looking to join an engineering type of role, and there aren't as many, social events that are surrounding those types of industries. That's where coffee meetings and introductions come into play. Now, when I talked about your connections, you want to think about their extended network as well. So ask your family, ask your friends if they know anybody that's relevant to that particular industry, because they also might know people. So then they can also introduce you to particular new people. So if they happen to know an engineer at Pynchon, then they can introduce you to them, and then you can have that coffee meeting. That's the easiest way in order to get a coffee meeting or a meeting with an individual, where you can just pick their brain, talk to them for half an hour, and sort of just show them what kind of individual that you are, as well as find more information about them and the company. Now, the hardest thing is to get coffee meetings with individuals you don't know, because that means that you are reaching out cold to people, and then that you don't know. And in order to do that, you're going to have to be doing it via some form of digital media, such as either LinkedIn, email, and, well, I probably wouldn't do anything else other than that. So those are individuals that you can find online. LinkedIn ends up being a really good resource, because you can search for an individual at a company, or you can search individuals that have particular titles, or people that are in particular fields, type of thing. So if I want to find somebody that's a VP of marketing at Coca-Cola or Pepsi, I can search that on LinkedIn and find a number of people. I can switch that down to the geographical region that I'm in, and then I can message them on LinkedIn. So that's why it's important to, obviously, if you're going to be going down that route and doing cold-based approaches, because let's say you're an individual that's, say, new to Toronto, doesn't have any family here, minimal connections. Doing the cold approach is the only way that you're going to be able to do it. Now, this will be uncomfortable for a lot of people, especially the introverted individuals, because this means that you're going to be reaching out to individuals completely cold, without knowing who they are, and really just putting yourself out there. Now, it's definitely scary, but after you do it again and again and again, it becomes significantly more normal. And that's a process that individuals have to take if they want to find those opportunities to get jobs in Canada. Okay? So when you're setting up that coffee meeting, all you have to do is just briefly introduce yourself and ask them if they can have like a 20-minute chat or something like that. It can even be on the phone if you don't have the opportunity to do it in person, because that individual might be in a location that's a little distant from you. That's totally fine. Once you set up that meeting, then you just have to be punctual. You have to be there on the phone or meet them near their office, and then just have that conversation, and then away you go. You have to do that probably like 10, 20 times, but then you meet more people. Then you expanded your network. And then from that network, you can ask and leverage their contacts and connections too, because they might know somebody else that's looking for a job, for an individual. So they might be hiring, but then they can recommend you from that because you had that 20-minute chat with them and you asked them for help. And most people like to help other people. So then you can expand your network that way. Okay. Next, just as important as knowing who people are and expanding your network, you need to have a well-crafted resume. So when you're crafting your resume, it has to be very clear. It has to be very concise. It has to tell people who you are in a very brief one-page format type of thing. I'm very heavily for the one-page resumes. When you look at individuals that are VPs of finance, VPs of marketing, or higher ups in companies, they're able to concise and bring down their resume into one page, which is really important because you want to be able to showcase who you are really quick because the attention span of the individual reading it is low. So you want to be able to communicate the best of what you are in the least amount of words. So in order to do that, first things first, you got to tell them who you are and how to contact you. A lot of people forget that when you're submitting a resume, you have to let people know how to get in contact with you. Because if they like you, they want to call you, they want to email you, you got to have that there. Another good thing is to have some good online presence. That means the utilization of things like Twitter, utilize things like LinkedIn. It's just having a presence there, commenting on things, being part of the environment. So if you're looking for a job in computer science, it's just being active on the places where people are active. So for computer science, it might be Stack Overflow in Canada. For engineering, it might be some LinkedIn groups. For business, it might be, on Twitter, just commenting about things that are happening in the industry. That is a very important thing for individuals because then you have some form of legacy, you have some form of stamp about yourself online. Now, when you're crafting your resume itself, you want to look at references. Never try to create a resume from scratch because guess what? Everyone has a resume and a lot of people put their resumes out there on the internet. All you have to do if you're looking for a project management role in, say, a pharmaceutical company is to just Google online. Look for a pharmaceutical project management resume. You will find a lot. This helps you with finding the verbiage, the sentence structure, the formatting of how to craft your resume to make it perfect. Okay? Now, I was actually just speaking with an individual the other day about his actual resume. He was a Bachelor of Commerce individual, concentration in accounting at Carleton. He showed me his resume and he showcased his internships that he had throughout the year, which was great. But he had graduated in 2018, and I was wondering what happened between, obviously, when you graduated in 2018 until now. And he told me that he started a company, and he didn't even put that on the resume. He had actually started a clothing company that he was an online retailer selling clothes online. It didn't end up working out, which is why he didn't think that it was going to be a good thing to put on his resume. But for a year and a half, he started his own business. And I told him that was probably the most relevant thing that you need to put on that resume, because you want to define and outline the skills that show people who you are and that differentiate you from other people. Because you have to understand that everybody does internships, everybody does volunteer experience, but what's that super unique thing that you've done? What's the caveat that makes you you? Have you participated in engineering competitions? Have you won anything in terms of prizes? Are you a college athlete where you are going for regional soccer championships? These are the things that you have to outline in order to shine your personality through on that resume. So for this particular kid, Alex, I ended up telling him that he needs to write probably half his resume surrounding this startup job, because that showed his entrepreneurialism, that showed his initiative, and that really shined through what he is as a person in the sense of being able to take high risk. And employers look at that very highly because they want self-starters. They want individuals that will take ownership of their roles. So that was a very important thing to have on the resume that he didn't have, that he missed. Anything that you can demonstrate that shows entrepreneurialism or initiative is a very important thing when it comes to the Canadian job market, because we focus very highly on individualism, and people need to show that they have what it takes in order to really push through hard times and in order to learn on their own. Those are two very important attributes that employers look for in candidates and individuals. And that comes from engineering-based roles or financial analysis-based roles, or even in healthcare, stuff like that. And that alludes into the power of initiative. So breaking initiative down into the most basic sense is, if you don't ask for something, you're never going to get it. That means if you never ask for that coffee meeting with that VP of marketing at Pepsi, you're never going to get it. If you don't ask for a referral to get a job from your mother, you're never going to get it. If you don't ask for feedback or editing on your resume, you're never going to get it. Initiative is probably the most powerful thing that you can do and focus on in order to help change your life and help change your career. Because a lot of people have trouble asking for stuff, and you need to get around that in order to really shine through who you are and in order to get the things that you want. That means taking ownership and action of the things that you need in order to help change your life. So when you're crafting that resume, you need to ask for feedback from some of your friends or your family members, or even some of your colleagues that are at the school that you're particularly in, or even at your current job. You need to ask for feedback on things, and you have to be able to take feedback well. Some people don't like criticism, but criticism is a very important part of making things better. So when you've crafted your resume and you think it's great, have somebody else read it. Have somebody in a different industry read it. Have somebody in the same industry read it, just so that you can get different thoughts and different opinions on how to make it better. Now, a lot of people have struggle with this because they end up being shy. So this is something that you can't be, because you have to be able to push past it. Now, this again goes back to the personality types of each and every one of you. People that are introverts have a lot harder time asking for other people's opinion and other people's help. But this is something that you have to push through in order to make sure that you have the best chances to succeed in the Canadian job market. So when you're asking for coffee meetings, or asking for intros to events, or asking for free passes because you might not be able to afford the $400 ticket, these are things that you have to try, because if you don't ask, you never know if you're going to get it. So you have to ask. Asking is the most important part, and it shows so much about you as a person, because you're putting yourself out there for the potential for somebody to say no. And everybody fears rejection, but you have to ask, because otherwise you might not ever get it. Even if there's a 10% chance of somebody giving you that coffee meeting, you might as well, because you have a 100% chance of not getting it if you don't ask. And that's why you have to end up staying positive. A lot of the career-based searching out there is going to be a hard process for each and every one of you. And it was for me as well. But you have to stay positive in light of all the rejection that you might get and the turbulences that you might go through. Because I myself even was going through school at Carleton University, where I did my Bachelor of Commerce. I did a concentration in accounting. The entire time I had my focus on entering into the accounting world and going and joining Deloitte. But after school, I changed my mind. I pivoted. I got down on myself because I didn't get into Ernst & Young, which was a company that I really wanted to get into. But I took that and made myself better. I stayed positive, and then I reevaluated my position, and that's when I went into commercial real estate in order to get to where I am now. You have to remain positive in the light of being turned down by individuals, because there are always going to be those individuals that won't turn you down and that will say yes. Now, English skills is something that is going to be very important because it is very scary for individuals to talk in a language that they might not fully comprehend or understand, because English ends up being a complicated language because there's a lot of nuances. It's like me speaking in Mandarin, where I might feel nervous about saying particular words because I might get the tones wrong. But you have to learn how to speak it commonly and fluently enough so that you can best communicate your abilities to everyone else. And that means stepping out of your comfort zone, taking initiative, and being positive by practicing as much as you can with any individual who will let you talk to them, by joining groups such as English language training groups or just online groups online that might be looking for individuals to speak with, and just talking out loud to yourself at home. All of these will help you get better at the language, be more confident, which will more than amplify any chance that you have to get a career. Because the more confident that you are, the more you're able to show off your own personality and particular skills, so that you'll be able to shine through the wonderful, awesome self that you are. Leading to confidence. Confidence end up being one of the most important things. Even if you don't have any particular skills, if you are confident and interesting, there will be opportunities for you. Now, what I mean by confident, it means somebody that stays positive in light of hardships. So if you didn't end up getting that particular job at Deloitte, you might be able to get a job at a smaller accounting firm in order to work your way up to that particular point. Because certain firms only look for the top tier talent, and unfortunately top tier talent sometimes has family members that are working at the company, just like when we talked about looking for your own family connections. Because if your dad is the director at a particular company, they're going to choose you over somebody that might be better than you. But then that individual that had the better grades is obviously going to potentially be down. But if they remain confident, they're going to get a job somewhere else. So when I talk about being interesting, that means you have to add a number of things to your life that makes you you. You have to have some form of passion, whatever that might be. So it might be cooking, it might be baseball, it might be basketball, sports, or it's just knitting, something like that. My particular passion when I was growing up was probably video games. So I would play a lot of StarCraft, Counter-Strike, and in addition to that, I would actually play a lot of basketball. So those were my combined passions growing up. In terms of passions now, I'm deeply into curling. But those are things that you need to have in order to be considered interesting, in order to talk to people. Because when you talk to people about different things that are going on in your life, it's always good to have stuff that you can talk about. Because if you're an individual that stays at home and doesn't do anything, then it's going to be very hard for you to speak to people about anything that might be going on in your life. But that doesn't mean that you can't stay at home and watch all the movies that you would want to watch or the TV shows, because those are things too. If you're an individual that is very cultured in filmography, then you might as well go watch it because that is your passion. But you have to identify those because those are important things that shape you as a person. And you have to shine those things through so that you can be considered interesting to other people by being able to have those conversations and network. Now, coming with staying positive and being confident, you just have to not really care too much about what other people think about you, especially when their viewpoints are negative. Now, this isn't to say that taking constructive feedback and utilizing it and making yourself better is a bad thing. But if there are people that are pushing you down and stipulating that you cannot do a particular thing, that is a lie. And you can achieve whatever it is that you might want to achieve. You just might have to take different steps than common or most people. But that means you have to just stay positive and strong in light of whatever difficulties that you might have, such as if somebody says no to a coffee meeting, or if you get denied or a job through an interview. It's important to just keep pushing forward and keep going through the process. Now, that being said, it's always important to smile. You have to be happy. You have to be positive, linking back to that through all of these circumstances. And another important thing that I'd like to note is that exercise ends up being a very important thing. I know that this is a career counseling based webinar, but if you exercise, that releases positive endorphins in your brain, which makes you a happier person, which makes it easier for you to network with individuals. And trust me, when it comes to this, if you are a happier, more positive person, networking is significantly easier. Because think about it, when you are speaking with another individual and if they are sad and glum, it is much harder to have a conversation with them than it is an individual that is positive and happy. Now, location. What do I mean by this? If you are an individual that wants to go work at an accounting firm or a computer startup or software startup, a technology startup, you have to think about where in the world are these companies aggregating. So if you want to work in financial banking, you want to go to cities like Toronto, New York, or Vancouver. Those are the main hubs and the main spots. You don't go to Edmonton, Alberta, in order to find a job in the banking sector. The best way that you can find an opportunity is to go where they are most heavily located. Because if you want to join a computer startup or be on the bleeding edge of technology, then you might want to go to Silicon Valley or even Waterloo in Ontario, which is a city that's very close by to Toronto, because that's where the most opportunities are going to be. That's why you'd have to heavily think about where you want to locate yourself. And yes, this means that you might have to locate yourself out of your present space. So if you're currently living in Ottawa, or if you're currently living in London, Ontario, then you might have to relocate to a spot where there's going to be more opportunities and more jobs, because that just gives you more options when you're trying to look for something that you want to do. So by researching what kind of career path that you want, you can find the cities that have the most densely populated variants in these jobs and relocate yourself there to give yourself the best shot. Now, just to briefly overview, presently, I have advised a lot of individuals. Some people that have worked at BMO, some people work at TD Bank, Microsoft, LaSalle Investment Management, and these people have gotten these jobs on their own merit. I may have helped them a bit, but it's all about the individual themselves. Brian, I think I want to open this up to questions now.
Yes, thank you very much, Garret. We're very happy that we're very thankful to all the information that Garret just shared. There's a lot of good insights and suggestions. Again, three things that I mostly agree with Garret before I move to the questions section is that you really have to know your strengths, especially for people like us who are international students. Right now, some of you in session are not, you might not be in Canada right now. You're in the application process, but still, it's the same thing. Getting a job, getting a school offer, you have to know who you are, what you do well, and as Garret said, always be positive and interesting. So it's very important that way. So we are just going to spend 10 more minutes for questions. So I see there are many questions from different groups, and we're just gonna just speed through all this. So the first question, Garret, one of the members asked is, you mentioned LinkedIn reach out, right? So so what exactly should we write on our LinkedIn profile? Because a lot of the people here are mainly, they're fresh job seekers, just graduated from school. In terms of experience, not really much to write. So before you reach out to a contact on LinkedIn, like how can we make our LinkedIn profile as professional as good as it can?
Great question, Brian. So what you want is to have, first and foremost, a professional photo of yourself. You don't want to have a selfie where you've taken it in the bathroom. You want to have a photo that makes you look good, whether you're in a suit, a pantsuit, a dress, whatever it might be. You just want it to be the most professional photo that you have there, because that's going to be the first thing that people see. Okay. In addition to that, you probably want to outline all the education that you have, and that means that you can put down all the universities and all the different programs that you're currently in. Put down any volunteer experience that you might have there, and really talk about it. Like, you can push the boundaries of what you've done in order to shape them into sort of interesting little tidbits. So if you volunteered at a soccer tournament, you could stipulate that if you did any of the planning, that you helped plan the soccer tournament itself. You don't have to say that you just were the individual that, you know, organized what teams played what teams, but you can talk about it in a more overarching sense by utilizing better language and framing it in a way that makes you look good. Okay, so volunteer experience, education, and a good picture. Those are the best things that you can have on there if you're somebody that doesn't have any work experience.
Great, thank you, Garret. And the next question we have, it's actually very specific to you. So we have one member very interested in commercial real estate or real estate appraisal. So she just wants to find out, if it's easy to find a job in appraisal, especially in the real estate industry, and also, if someone is in another city like Montreal or Vancouver, what's the easy process to get a license to be a real estate appraiser in Toronto? That's the question.
Sorry, Brian, could you repeat the last part?
So basically, anyone from other cities, what's the general process for getting a license to be a real estate appraiser in Toronto?
Okay. In order to become an appraiser. So in order to become an appraiser, you have to do a Bachelor of Commerce first. That includes I think it includes about 14 courses that you have to take. I didn't end up having all the courses that I needed in order to get the appraisal license. So I had to take some online courses through the University of British Columbia, which I completed. And then from there, you have to do what you call a demo, which is about a year-long process where you write, I think, a 250-page report where you appraise a particular property, and then you have to submit it and defend it against the council for in Ontario, the designation is called AACI. I believe it is called that across Canada, but that's how you get through that process.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You mentioned coffee chats before, and we all know it's very obvious that coffee chats are very important for meeting people, getting connections on your own, in addition to knowing someone from your dad and mom's side. But what exactly should you do in a coffee chat? Like, how do you, like, the biggest problem people have, this is actually one of the questions we have from the group. The biggest challenge is, when you go to coffee chat, you don't know how to start. And after that, after you had a coffee, you don't know how to maintain a relationship. So maintaining relationships has become a really hard part for coffee chats. So what do you suggest?
So, yeah, to answer that in two parts. When you first have a coffee chat, you want to talk to the individual about themselves first. That's the easiest thing to do. Because all you have to do is just ask them, what's your job? What do you do in it? And then they're going to talk about themselves for quite a bit. And then questions. Because you want to be curious. Because, again, this is, say, for that individual that's looking to be an appraiser. If you're talking to an appraiser, you want to know more about that job. Like, what do they do? How do they do it? Because this is something that you're passionate in, and this is something that you want to do, right? So you should be curious about what it is that they actually do. So how it is that they find information for a report, how do they value things? What kind of different tools do you use? How do you get clients? What's a day-to-day like in that particular job? These are all things that you'd want to know because you want to educate yourself on it. Now, I know after like the second or third or fourth coffee chat, this might be a little bit redundant, but you can keep asking those questions to new people, and even though you already know the answers, because this shows engagement with them and helps them open up a bit, because then they might start talking about things that are a bit more personal about themselves. And in order to create a personal relationship, you have to share some personal stuff about yourself. So that's why I talked about that being interesting and being confident, because if you have a number of activities that you compete in and do, you might find like-minded people that are out there. Because don't forget that each of these people that are in these positions now used to be in your position back then. So if you are a sort of a superstar in soccer, you might find out that the appraiser is a superstar in soccer, or you might watch a lot of soccer, and then you can talk about that. That forms that personal bond with individuals by creating that personal connection. So you want to start with business, but you want to eventually allude it into something that is a little bit more personal, so you can have that connection with them. Because once you start talking about personal stuff, then it's a lot easier to continue that conversation, because then you're talking about sports, or you're talking about curling, or you're talking about cooking, or you're talking about movies or films or something like that. It's totally okay to talk to professionals about that, because they do it too. Don't forget that. They are just people like you that are, whatever, 10 years older. That's it. You're in 10 years going to have the same types of skills, interests, and activities that you do now. Now, in order to maintain that relationship, you just want to periodically continue reaching out to them. So let's say every 3-4 months type of thing. If you're still looking for a job, then you want to keep reaching out, ask them if they want to meet up again. It's totally okay to meet up again. You guys can meet up for something a little more casual than a coffee chat. You could go for a lunch, you could go for a beer, you could go for dinner, whatever it might be, you can ask them for it. Because at that point, you've made a personal connection, you have a relationship with this person, and that's how you maintain it. Because if you end up getting a job in the industry, then you might see them at different events or different types of functions. So then you'll be able to maintain the relationship that way. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you, Garret. That's very resourceful. Given time, we'll just open questions for a couple more people. The next question we have is it's actually going to be a quick question. One student asked, I really like consulting, management consulting like Deloitte and EY, all those companies. Like in Canada, is there anything like internship I can do to actually get hired by those companies while I'm doing my master's at a school? So I don't know if that, Garret, do you want to provide some insights on that?
Yeah, 100%, because those companies do a ton of internships. They have lots. When I was in Ottawa, that's where Carleton University is, because I did my Bachelor of Commerce in Accounting. They had networking events pretty much every year, and every company had at least 2 or 3 were specifically targeted towards students. Those are the events that you want to get into. Each of them have it, whether you're at McGill or if you're at Carleton, U of T, UBC, they have them. You just have to find out where they are. They particularly might target accounting students more. So try to figure out who the accounting team is, or who the financial team is, and talk to them. Talk to the students that are at your school, because they might know of those particular events, because they're usually not publicly known, but they're usually circulated amongst the students at the school. So just definitely get into those particular events and try to find out when and where they're happening by talking to some of the other students that are around you.
Mm-hmm. Great. This question is about human resources. I know you know a lot of people in human resources, but I guess it's I'm going to rephrase this question a little bit. So basically, as a HR human resource program student, what can you do without any internship or co-op options what can you do to kind of like strengthen your background to get a job in this field? Do you need any license or any special courses you can take or programs? Like, what's your suggestions?
Best thing I can say for an HR professional looking to break into the industry is to maybe look to do some volunteer activities at organizations in the area, because if you volunteer at these organizations, you can actually leverage your HR skills by assisting and helping with maybe some of the hiring and aptly the firing of individuals that are within that company, because that at least helps demonstrate some of your experience and helps sort of gross you up, because then you can talk about that. You can talk about the times that you helped and assisted an organization do some of the HR related functions. Now, again, HR people end up being very open and very prone to coffee chats, so that is also another thing that I would particularly recommend. But in terms of courses and certifications, honestly, HR is probably one of the most about who you know, and that's where you have to just really work on expanding that network that you have through coffee chats, LinkedIn messaging, stuff like that. And HR people love talking to HR people, so they are probably one of the most friendliest group of people to actually like speak with.
Yes, and just to add to that, it's, Garret has a very good point. HR people, they're always talking to everyone. We've known a lot of people even in our network, in our LinkedIn network at UniExplore. We know a lot of people, HR managers, director of HR. They're all very, very positive. They're all very, very, very warm people. So you won't feel any pressure talking to them. You feel like we've known each other for a long time. So if you're an HR student, definitely make sure you have your personality built up. Make sure you talk to as many people as you can. So we just have time for the one last question, and then we'll wrap up the session. So this question has been asked by a lot of people, even in our application process when people talk to us about applying to schools. So it's about the ranking, or the ranking of universities, schools. So basically, a couple of students asked, if you're looking for investment banking jobs, to get your work in investment banking, we know that some investment banking firms, they specifically look for alumni or students, graduates from like U of T, like the more popular top ranking schools. But does that mean if I'm not from those schools, I can't really get a job in the big four or the big five banks or big four companies, big four consulting companies, or investment banking? So what do you think? How do you think that how do you think the Canadian job market is different from others in terms of the recognition of schools and how that's helpful to your job seeking?
So what I'd like to say is, first, it really dives down to location, as well as sort of there's some classing of schools. If you go to any mid-tier university in Canada, and that basically includes most places minus some colleges, you have a shot of getting into a big four bank or one of the big five consulting firms, or even like this big five sister firms for law firms, stuff like that. You have that opportunity. Like, the reason why the big four banks look so highly on U of T is because the big four banks are based in Toronto because of the location. They're all based in Toronto, so they're obviously going to look at the best school in Toronto and try to harvest talent out of it. When it comes to sort of the big four consulting firms like Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte, they have offices everywhere. Where their head office might be in Toronto, but they still have big Ottawa-based divisions. They still have big Montreal divisions. So these companies still look at those schools. Hence, I'm in investment banking. I went to Carleton, which is arguably a second-tier based school compared to U of T and McGill. But as long as you can get into the industry, experience ends up trumping your education. So while you might not have that clear direct path in order to the big four banks, even if you get into the industry some way and somehow and work your way up by demonstrating your knowledge and skills, you can get there.
Perfect. So we're just about to wrap up, but I see there's another member just asking a question. So this is related to finding a job in the financial services industry. Well, basically, the question is, I've been submitting resumes, for quite a while, and doing my CFA and FRM right now, and nothing has really come back. So with no experience, no professional experience in the past, just like a fresh graduate from finance, should I just keep sending out resumes? Well, my answer to this is, I'll hand it over to you there for some final comments. But my answer to this is, you really just, you can't just send out resumes online. Like especially in this industry, in the finance industry, if you want to get a job, if you're taking the CFA, that means you want to get a serious job in finance, investments, right? And this industry requires you to network with a lot of people, like really go to a lot of events. So, which is basically what Garret mentioned before. So, Garret, do you have some final comments on this?
Yeah, so thank you, Brian. But I'd really hammer home the fact that you do have to go out there and talk to people. The more people you network with, the better it is. It's arguably it's like 10 times better than submitting that random resume, because unless you're an individual that has 30 years of experience and your resume speaks for themselves and you have a name for yourself in the industry, nobody's going to know who you are and nobody's going to really look at that resume. And it's an unfortunate truth that's out there. It's more about who you know than what you know. So that's why you got to go out there and get to know people. Once you get to be more personal to people, you're going to get past that HR hurdle where people are going to look at your resume, and then you're going to get that interview, and then that's a whole different story. But then that's how you get that first step in. You got to know more people. You got to meet more people. And again, it's going to help you not just by getting a job, but it's going to help you get that second and third and fourth job, because then the more people you know, the more business you're going to be able to do, and the more opportunities that are going to potentially come your way.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Thank you very much, Garret. And so we're going to wrap up the session now, and I just want to say some final words to everybody who's participated. Thank you very much for your time. And I know it's extremely hard for people to find a job nowadays, especially for people like us with international background. I can tell you, I've been in Canada for almost 9 years, and I started my first job with knowing nobody. My dad, mom, they're not here, don't have friends with big titles in Canada, and I never just submitted resumes. I always talk to people, networking, LinkedIn. Probably, in total, I've talked to like 100 people on LinkedIn, random strangers. So you gotta, that's one thing that Garret mentioned today. Get out of your comfort zone, right? Step out of your comfort zone. You really have to push yourself, because the success is right there. It's just, outside of the comfort zone circle. So once you step out, you'll get to success very easily. So I just want to share that piece with every one of you. And some of you are in the job seeking process, present in Canada. Some of you are still in the application process to schools, mainly in China. No matter where you are, you got to know your strength. You got to fight for it. You got to, keep positive. All right. So always try to, try to step out your comfort zone. Try to go further. And we'll help you. This is our first session, but later on we'll have more information, more seminars, as Garret mentioned, to share with you. And we'll have other ways to help you through the process. But if you want to know more about the career programs, add UniExplore Assistant. The QR code is attached here, and he'll be able to help you better understand more about our programs, our career coaching. But for now, another big thanks to Garret. And thanks again for everyone joining the session. And we're happy to host you Sunday. For everyone in China, have a great night. Everyone in Canada, have a great Sunday. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.